Is the screen working?
Yep, I can see
Yeah,
it.
okay.
Thanks.
Well, thank you everyone for joining me today. So my name is Robin Haldenby, and I am one of the public education coordinators with the Alzheimer's Society of Brant, Haldeman, Norfolk, Hamilton, and Halton. We have a really long name. I specifically cover Brant, Haldeman, and Norfolk. So today I'm going to be talking about brain fit. So we're going to talk a little bit about what is dementia, risk factors for dementia, addressing the risk factors, and then we're going to talk about how to exercise your brain. So when we talk about our brain, it is not very big. So if you put your two fists together, it's about the size of that. It's about 3 pounds. So if you spend a lot of time in the kitchen, that's about the same as a can of diced tomatoes. So it's very small. It doesn't weigh a ton, but it's incredibly powerful. But it's also something we don't really think about working out. So it's a very important part of our body, but we don't actively seek to work it out the same way that we do physically for the rest of our body. So, engaging in brain health activities can help decrease your risk of other cognitive and chronic conditions, including multiple different types of dementia. So, no one thing leads to dementia, but there is multiple things that have been kind of pinpointed as the risk factors that might increase someone's risk. And I'm going to go over all of those. So, first, what is dementia? Dementia itself is not a disease. It's a set of symptoms that reduce a person's ability to perform everyday activities. So the disease, that would be something like Alzheimer's disease, that's actually physically making changes in the brain. So we call it the plaques and tangles. Dementia would be what we see as a result of those physical changes. So that disease can be happening for years before we actually see dementia symptoms. So I'm going to go through a typical list of symptoms. This is not all encompassing. Not everyone will have these. This is just some of the more common ones. So the first one is memory loss. Memory loss is the most common and most widely known symptom of dementia. It's about 95% of cases do experience some form of memory loss, which means about 5% don't actually have any memory loss at all. And we have difficulty with attention. So for someone with dementia, all five of their senses are firing at the same time. So touch, taste, smell, hearing, seeing, that's all coming in at once. And they have no real way of shutting that down. So they could get really distracted really easily if there's a lot going on. Problem solving. So this can be something like doing taxes or complicated paperwork, or it can be little things like saying, choosing what you want for dinner. That choice might get very big and overwhelming to a person living with dementia. Language. So this is words spoken, heard, read, written, as well as how it's processed in the brain. So we can see deficits in any form of language. That could be word finding, so not being able to find that word to fit into that sentence, inserting inappropriate words or using words incorrectly without noticing, interpreting what is being said to them wrong. So someone asks them to pass them a hat and they heard, "Where's the dog?" and they're going off looking for the dog. Could also be some people might start swearing more or reverting to mother tongue, so reverting to their first language. Changes in mood and behavior. So this is any drastic change from before the person had dementia. So it could be maybe they were an introvert their entire life, now all of a sudden they're an extrovert. Or it could be someone having heightened mood swings. So one minute they're happy, next minute they're angry, and we can't quite tell exactly why. Issues with vision. So there is a lot of different vision issues that come with aging, cataracts, glaucoma, macular degeneration, but also with dementia, someone may have issues with peripheral vision. So vision on the sides, hopefully you can see my camera. So we call it kind of a ski mask. It's kind of like this. And as dementia progresses, it can become binoculars, which is just two little circles. And as it progresses further, it can become monoculars, which is just one eye at a time, which is why we always say if you do know someone living with dementia, always approach them from the front because they might not be able to see you on the sides. And then the last one is balance and movement. So Falls are the number one reason why seniors do end up in hospital. So we really want to try to prevent that as much as possible. For someone with dementia, they may also not know quite where their body is in the space that they're in. So they might go to walk through a door, maybe they hit their arm on the way out, or they go to sit down on a chair and they sit on the arm instead of on the seat of a chair, because they can't quite tell where their body is in that space. So there is no typical set of symptoms or sequence for symptoms. Each person will experience them differently in different ways and at different times. And there's a lot of different things that influence that. Could be just that individual's lifestyle, their biology, other conditions they have. Lots and lots of things can influence it, and also the type of dementia they have. So if you're able to, if you want to take a guess on how many different types of dementia you think there are, you can type it in the chat, um, and just see what you might think. I have gotten every number possible, so I've heard it all. So whatever number you think. So I got a guess of six,
I'm guessing
five,
10.
10. I'll give you another second if anyone has any other guesses. So the Alzheimer's Society of Canada recognizes over 120 different types of dementia. So typically, a lot of people say low numbers. So I've gotten like one, two, three, four, a lot of lower ones.
Oh,
A lot of times it's because that's
yeah,
the most common.
yeah. Oh my goodness. So is there'll probably be some,
Um, so the Alzheimer's Society in the US recognizes over 200, and there's a doctor from McMaster that just says hundreds. So it's kind of a trick question. We don't really know the answer because we find new ones all the time. So I'm going to go through just what the most common ones are. So first one, Alzheimer's disease. That is the most common, makes up about 60 to 80% of all cases. It's caused by plaques and tangles in the brain that cause brain cells to die over time. Typically, that first symptom is the short-term memory loss, but we can also see changes in judgment, reasoning, and behavior. Then we have vascular dementia. So that's caused by strokes, TIAs, bleeding or blocked blood vessels. So anything that kind of deprives the brain of that oxygen and nutrients that it needs. The symptoms vary because it depends where in the brain that happened. Does not mean if someone had a stroke that they're going to get dementia. Just means if they had a stroke and they go on to develop dementia, it'd probably be vascular dementia. Then we have Lewy body dementia. So this is very similar to Parkinson's. It's caused by the Lewy body protein. So the same protein that we see in Parkinson's. We see a lot of the similar symptoms. So gait issues, movement, tremors. The difference is we also see hallucinations as well, and I'll go into that a little bit more on the next slide. We have frontal temporal. So this is kind of an umbrella term for a bunch of rare dementias that are all affecting the frontal lobe and the temporal lobes of the brain. Typically, we see changes in behavior, personality, and language. And it's a bit unique because the average age of onset in Canada is age 57, where most other dementias are 65 and above, other than young onset. And then at the very end, we have mixed dementia. So people can have multiple different types of dementia. So it could be like Alzheimer's and vascular, frontal temporal and Alzheimer's, any kind of mixture. And then above, we have mild cognitive impairment. So this is more than we would expect from normal aging, but with the appropriate supports, that person can continue to live their day-to-day life. They just might need a little bit extra support from either people around them or just cues in their environment. It can lead to dementia, but in its current state, it is not dementia. So let's look at the difference between Parkinson's disease with dementia, and Lewy body dementia. So with Parkinson's disease, it's movement disorder. Somebody who lives with Parkinson's will experience that progressive movement-related symptoms throughout their journey, but there may not be any cognitive changes. If somebody experiences the movement symptoms of Parkinson's disease for at least 1 year, and then goes on to develop a cognitive impairment, that's what we call Parkinson's disease with dementia. They may or may not develop those hallucinations as well at some point. And then for Lewy body dementia, the cognitive and movement symptoms will appear within 6 months of each other. So it could be the Parkinson symptoms or the cognitive showing first, but they'll kind of follow each other or they'll happen together. And we will see those hallucinations also at some point throughout that journey as well. So I know it's a little confusing. They're all very similar. It's just kind of about when those symptoms show up or if they do. So then let's switch and talk a little bit about brain health and risk reduction. So in the past, so from 1906 to 2005, the focus was really on finding a treatment or a cure for the disease. Unfortunately, they did not find that. So in 2005, they kind of shifted the focus a little bit more towards prevention. So they're looking at how do we stop more people from developing dementia. In 2017 and in 2020, the Lancet Commission released a report on dementia prevention, intervention, and care. They identified 9 modifiable risk factors, so things that we can change. They updated that to 12 in 2020. This was a great report. The only thing is it was American. So we really wanted a Canadian study. So in 2022 and in 2024, the Alzheimer's Society of Canada released the landmark study. There should be a third part coming. We just don't know when. But that redefined kind of what dementia is. So in this study, they found that if the onset of dementia could be delayed by 10 years, over 4 million new cases of dementia in Canada could be avoided by 2050. So that is a lot, and that's really what we're trying to focus on. So this study showed us the prevalence of dementia, the diversity of who is developing dementia in Canada, and it showed us our risk factors as well. So I'm going to go through the risk factors. So the study found 3 non-modifiable ones. So things we can't do anything about. And then it found 12 modifiable ones. So things that we can change. So for the first non-modifiable, age. Age is the #1 risk factor for developing dementia. After the age of 65, your risk of getting dementia doubles every 5 years. Does not mean it's part of normal aging. It's just the biggest risk factor. Only about 8% of people over 65 actually have some form of dementia. The next is gender. So women are more likely to get dementia than men. It's about 2 to 3, or about 60%. They believed for a long time that that was because women live longer. So if women are living longer and age is the #1 risk factor, then that's why they're getting it. They are doing more research now, so they're looking at biological differences, so health conditions that women might get more. They're looking at hormones, menopause. They're also looking at some societal differences. So women have had less access to education and less access to higher retaining jobs. So I think that could also play a role, but they're still doing research. It takes a long time, so we won't get answers for a while. And then the last one is genetics. A lot of people believe, like, if my mom had dementia, my grandpa had dementia, my aunt had dementia, I'm going to get dementia. That is not typically the case. Only about 3% of people with dementia got it as a result of genetics. So a lot of it is due to something we call sporadic Alzheimer's, which is just kind of, we don't really know exactly what caused it. When we see dementia running through a family, a lot of times it's not due to DNA. It's due to things like diet or activity levels that have kind of gone through the family, could be generational trauma, could be income level, could be other health conditions that put them at higher risk that are genetic. So it's not necessarily that dementia is genetic, but there can be some other things that can cause dementia that do run through a family. So then going to our modifiable risk factors. So I'm going to go through all 12. A note that just because they say modifiable doesn't always mean it's that easy. So just as you see them, I know sometimes people will be like, well, I can't change that. There's some of these that is not as easy to change. So the study split it up into age group that it's most impactful. That doesn't mean that if you are past that point that you can't do anything about it. It's just how it organized it. So in early life, lack of education, and midlife, hearing loss, traumatic brain injury, hypertension, alcohol misuse, and obesity. And in later life, smoking, depression, social isolation, physical inactivity, air pollution, and diabetes. So they found that eliminating these risk factors could reduce the prevalence of dementia by up to 40%. So it's a pretty big percentage. A note on a couple of these: depression, that is untreated depression. Depression can be a symptom of Parkinson's, and it's often caused by that depletion of neurotransmitters. So things like serotonin, dopamine. I can never say this one, norepinephrine, I think it is. I can never say that one right. But if you treat it, it is kind of reduces that risk factor. So it's another really important reason why you should treat depression if you are experiencing it. Social isolation, that's another one to kind of draw some attention to. So about 64 to 65% of people with Parkinson's do experience loneliness, and also just seniors in general. There is a lot of loneliness. So it's very important to keep socially active. And then physical inactivity is another one. A lot of people will do less physical activity, but it's very important to find some exercise that might be tailored to what you need so you can keep that physical activity up. So a little bit before I go into all the brain fit tips, bit of a disclaimer. One size does not fit all. One food will not fix everything. No pill will prevent dementia, but it's also never too late. If you see a post on Facebook that says, eat this one food and you won't get dementia, or take this one medication and you won't get dementia, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. There is things that we can do just to change our lifestyle to make it less likely that we will get dementia, but there is nothing that will prevent it. So don't listen to all the things you see online. There's been a lot of new ones recently that I read and I go, yeah, that's not going to work. So just a little disclaimer. So our first brain fit tip is to stay connected. So social connection is a very important part of maintaining your brain health as you age. So spending time with friends, family, others in the community, that helps keeps your mind active and engaged while also supporting your emotional well-being. One of the best things that you can do is continue to participate in activities that you already enjoy. So maybe that's meeting friends for a coffee, attending a club, playing cards, participating in a group. All of those provide really valuable opportunities for connection and engagement. And it's also worth trying something new. So joining a new program, taking a class, maybe looking at a new hobby where you can meet new people, learn a new skill, that all really challenges your brain in different ways. We can only do really two activities that can work our entire brain. One of them is music, which I will talk about. The other one is social activity. So it is very important to have that social activity because it is working your entire brain. It can also help improve your cognitive engagement and your mood. It lowers your stress, your social isolation, and your risk of depression, which are all those risk factors that we talked about. The next one is to follow a healthy diet. So this can reduce your risk of diabetes, of hypertension, obesity, high cholesterol, all of which are risk factors for dementia. So we talk about something called the MIND diet. So this is the Mediterranean Dash Intervention for Neurodegenerative Delay. MIND diet's just easier to say. So this diet talks about 9 brain healthy foods and 5 brain harming foods. So I'm going to go through what they are. A note before I start: even moderate adherence to this diet was still found to be very helpful, and it reduced someone's risk by about 20 to 30%. So if I say a food on the brain harming list that you're like, nah, I need to eat that, that's okay. Just moderate adherence is still good. So for the brain healthy, the first one is green leafy vegetables, things like kale, spinach, cooked greens, salads. So have 6+ servings per week. All other vegetables, at least one other vegetable, added to that green leafy vegetable at least once per day. For fruits, berries are best for your brain. Blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, blackberries. Have at least twice per week. There was a study done that said blueberries and strawberries were the best ones, but we're unsure if they looked at the other ones, so really any berry is good. Nuts, so really any kind. You can have walnuts, almonds, pistachios, cashews, whatever it is that you like. At least 5+ servings per week. Do be mindful that a serving is kind of the palm of your hand. So it's not a lot. And also, if you're having ones with salt or any kind of like nut butters, be wary of extra ingredients. I know they taste better, doesn't mean they're better for you. And then whole grains. So 3+ servings of whole grains a day. And then we have a couple more. So beans. This could be beans, lentils, soybeans, 4+ times per week. So 4 or more servings per week. Use olive oil as your main cooking oil. Fish, so fatty fish like salmon, sardines, trout, tuna, mackerel. They're all a good source of omega-3 fatty acids, so at least once per week. And then poultry at least twice per week. And then we have the 5 foods to avoid. So again, if I mention one that you really like, there's one on this list that I cannot stop eating. It's still okay. Just try to reduce it and try to just bring in some of those brain healthy foods. So the first is butter and margarine. Less than 1 tablespoon per day. Cheese is the one I hate. No more than once per week. So no more than 1 serving per week. I know I say cheese every time and people are like, "What? Cheese? I love cheese." I do too. So just try to reduce it a little bit. Fried foods are discouraged, so limit it to less than once per week. Red meat, no more than 3 servings per week. And then pastries and sweets, limit to less than 4 times per week. So the great thing about this diet is it's not a stringent diet of you have to do this and this and this. It's kind of just guidelines. So the closer you can get to those guidelines, the better. But just trying to incorporate a little bit is still going to be beneficial for your brain. And it's a lot easier for us to do than just switching everything. If you just do little bits at a time, it's going to be much easier for you to stick to it. So then the next brain fit tip is to stay active. So we know that physical activity is good for our bodies, but it's also one of the best things that you can do for your brain. So when we exercise, blood flow increases to our brain, delivers more oxygen and nutrients, which helps to nourish our brain cells, and it supports the growth of new connections in the brain. So being physically active can help reduce a lot of those risk factors of dementia. So it can reduce the risk of depression, diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, obesity, and physical inactivity. It can improve mood, reduce stress, promote better sleep, and help manage symptoms of various conditions. So research also suggests that people who exercise regularly are less likely to develop heart disease, stroke, obesity, and diabetes. All of those are linked to that increased risk of dementia. So they found that regular physical activity might reduce the risk of dementia by around 30% and the risk of Alzheimer's disease by about 45%. So very big percentages. The exercise doesn't have to be going to the gym. It's whatever exercise works for you and that you enjoy. It's recommended that people over the age of 65 get about 150 minutes or 2.5 hours of moderate to vigorous physical activity each week. That is whatever you're capable of doing. Could be going for a walk, could be doing things like yoga or chair yoga. You could do Pilates, Tai Chi, really whatever works for you. It's really important to focus on mobility and balance just to try to reduce that risk of falls as well. So consider joining a group. That usually makes it a little bit easier to exercise if you can do it with other people. So any kind of group that kind of caters to whatever your movement needs are. There is that saying now, sitting is the new smoking. So whatever you can do to get up and to get some movement throughout your day will be really beneficial for your brain. Another important way to support your brain health is to prevent falls. So I know I mentioned it a little bit already, but falls are the #1 reason why seniors do end up in hospital. Many falls can be avoided, and taking those steps to reduce your risk of falls can help protect your brain and your physical health. So falls are one of the leading causes of head injuries in older adults, and head injuries is one of our risk factors for dementia. Falls can also affect quality of life in a lot of other ways. Could lead to hospitalization, which reduces independence, could make people have a fear of falling again so they don't go out as much, social isolation. So make sure you reduce your risk as much as possible. Wear your non-slip shoes, use prescribed mobility aids. If you have a walker or a cane, use it. My grandmother likes to leave her walker in one room, walk to another room, and then wander around trying to find it. So make sure you bring it with you and you use it if you have it. Use those railings and grab bars that are available and do that exercise that can help improve your strength, your mobility, your balance, and your flexibility so that you can stay as independent for as long as possible. And the fourth brain fit tip is to keep your brain active. So just like our muscles need exercise to stay strong, our brain also needs exercise so that it can stay strong. So it's important to continue learning, thinking, trying new things. Whatever might challenge your brain can be really beneficial. So one reason this is so important is because cognitive engagement helps to build something we call the cognitive reserve. So the cognitive reserve is the brain's ability to cope or compensate for changes or damages that might occur through age. So as someone ages, having that stronger cognitive reserve can help prevent some of those just normal aging things that may happen. Can also make it so that if someone does develop dementia, it takes longer to actually see those effects. So you may have heard that saying, use it or lose it. It's kind of the same with your brain. If you don't use certain parts of your brain, it's going to weaken those areas and they won't be as strong. So really important things are lifelong learning, learning new information, learning new skills, anything that can kind of work your brain a little bit harder. So that could be maybe learning a new language or taking a class, attending a workshop, trying a new hobby, anything that might work for you. Another great thing is to engage in those brain challenging games or activities. So things like Sudoku puzzles, crosswords, word jumbles, chess, solitaire, really any games like that. A bonus if you can do it with someone else, because then you're getting that social engagement as well. So you're kind of hitting two different spots. You can also challenge your brain just by breaking up your routine. So our brain kind of goes on autopilot when we do the same thing every day the same way. So small changes can encourage your brain to kind of adapt and pay attention. It might feel awkward to you, but that awkwardness is your brain making new connections. So you could try even just brushing your teeth or brushing your hair with the opposite hand than you usually do. You could try doing your morning routine in a different order. So if you always do things in one order, just switch it up and try a different order. It could be even just taking a different route than you usually do. So say you always go to the grocery store the exact same way, just take a little detour so you can see some new things. So it's not about being an expert at any of these things or spending hours on doing them. It's just trying to fit that into your daily life as much as possible so that you can work those different areas. So I do have a little brain teaser here. So you're welcome to type into the chat what you think the answer is. So Luke had it before, Paul had it after, Matthew never had it at all, boys don't have it, all girls have it once, old Mr. Mulligan had it twice in succession, and Dr. Lowell had it before and after. He had it twice as bad after as before. Can anyone guess the answer? Some people get this super quick, and other people it takes a while. For me, it took a long time. Someone got it right away. The answer is L. There we go. So you can see in all the words there, they all have L's in them. So this is kind of an example of just a little thing you can do to try to work your brain in a different way. There is all sorts of different brain teasers that might be a little bit easier for some people, a little bit harder for some. So just kind of find ones that might be challenging for you. So another great thing is, I mentioned this already, but listening to music. So music, playing a musical instrument is the only other activity that works your entire brain. Just listening to music can also work a lot of different regions in your brain. So if you just sit in a room and listen to music, that is actually a brain workout as well. And it can also help with your emotional well-being. So it can help you relax, reduce your stress, improve your mood. Any kind of music, if you listen to new music or music maybe you didn't really like before or haven't listened to, that actually works your brain even more. I know it might not be as nice as listening to the music you like, but it can help to work your brain more. Another really important thing is to check for hearing loss. So you might have noticed that hearing loss is one of the modifiable risk factors, makes up about 8% of our risk factors, but it can be mitigated if someone is using hearing aids. So if there is some way for them to mitigate that hearing loss, it actually removes that risk factor. So whatever you can do to stay engaged, to stay social, that's the important part. Because if someone is experiencing hearing loss, they may kind of withdraw from the world around them, and that's working less with their brain. So make sure you are getting your hearing checked. And if you have hearing aids, make sure you wear them. If your hearing aids aren't working for you, go back and tell them. There is a lot of new technology now that works a lot better. Another one is to try to limit alcohol intake. So they found that there are health consequences of alcohol that can begin with as little as 3 to 6 drinks per week. So try to limit as much as possible. On the original Mind diet, they actually had wine on there as a brain healthy food. That has been removed. So it is no longer part of the Mind diet. Try to just limit as much as possible. The same with smoking. Reduce or quit smoking if it is possible. I know it's one of those things that's easier said than done. And then monitor your health. So know what your numbers are so that you know if there is something that has changed. So you can monitor that for yourself. Also keep a note so that you can let your doctor know if something has changed. So what's good for your heart is good for your brain. You want to make sure your heart is healthy so that it can keep your brain healthy. Maintain good sleeping habits. So there was a study done that said people in their 50s and 60s who got 6 hours of sleep or less a night were at a much higher risk of developing dementia. So aim as much as possible for 7 to 8 hours. I know it's easier said than done. Try your best to use any tips that you can find that might help you improve your sleep a little bit. So some things you can exercise during the day, not before bed. Get out in the morning into the sunlight. That can really help just kind of set your brain for the day. If you can't sleep, get up and do something boring or relaxing and then go back to bed later. And avoid watching TV late meals, or checking your phone right before you go to bed, it can disrupt your sleep. So there's lots and lots of tips that are involved in sleep. Aim for that 7 to 8 hours as much as possible. Get some fresh air. So air pollution was one of the risk factors as well. So seek fresh air as much as you can. There is a lot of harmful chemicals that do come from traffic. So try to get out in green spaces. That fresh air can decrease your stress and it can increase your mood. It also brings in a lot of nutrients and oxygen. That's a lot better for your brain because we do tend to breathe a little bit deeper when we're outside. If you can do exercise outside, that's even better for your brain. So then, what should you do? So consider what you need to pay attention to from today's list that I shared. Remain heart healthy and brain curious. And be aware of any changes of not normal aging and seek help. So it's not about making a bunch of big changes to your lifestyle all at once. Make those small changes that are a bit more cognizant of your brain health. So make it purposeful that you are working your brain, but don't do a whole bunch at once because then you're not going to stick to it. Make changes in a way that you will form that habit so you can see those real changes and those real benefits. So I'm just going to very briefly go over what we do at the Alzheimer's Society, just in case you do need to access any of our services at any time. So we're completely free. We're accessible to anyone. We have support and counseling for people living with dementia, care partners, family members, and friends. We do also have support groups. We do education for people living with dementia, care partners, family members, and friends. We also do education for community groups, healthcare professionals, and first responders. We have health and wellness programs, so exercise programs, art programs, and social programs. And we do have exercise programs that are open to anyone. You do not need to have dementia to access them. And then we have information and referrals. So we have a lot of resources. We are great at providing reading material. If you ever do want to know more, our website has tons and tons of resources. All our offices have tons of resources. We can also help with system navigation and accessing community supports. We also have Behavioral Supports Ontario that works through us if there's someone that's experiencing a responsive behavior. And that is all. Are there any questions at all?
So feel free to put your question in the chat or use the hand feature and unmute yourself and speak, please. Yeah, I would say take advantage of having Robin here. She's super knowledgeable about Alzheimer's and dementia and Parkinson's and all that.